And like, how do I create myself? No, I don't, I know, yeah.
Hello, welcome. Welcome to those joining. Hello, everyone. I'll just maybe wait another 2 minutes before we start the webinar, just to see if more people would like to join. Okay, so I think we can start now. Before going into the webinar itself, just some housekeeping rules. I think everybody, as soon as you sign up, your microphone is muted. However, at the end of the presentation, we will have a Q&A session to allow you to ask Professor Samatanga all the questions that you would have. And then feel free to, either ask them directly in the chat and I can read them out loud, or if you want, you can also raise your hand and then ask them directly. Now, for those of you who don't know us, we are the African Professionals for Progress. We are a nonprofit organization that is based in Zurich. And our goal, well, we want to have a global platform of highly skilled and trained individuals that are from Africa, from the diaspora, and of course from Afro descendant countries. And this is just to leverage knowledge, know-how, and skills for the benefit of our respective countries. Now, one of our particular goal is, of course, to push forward an African intelligentsia globally, and simply for us to allow us to have a platform where we exchange different ideas, transformative ideas, which can, in the end, help us shape our different countries and bring them forward into the future, actively participate into their journey. So if you want to know more about the organization, I can put in the chat a link to our website. So yeah, you can have more information about us. In this context, we have made a few webinars where we invite people in our network who have done who have come up with brilliant ideas and brilliant entrepreneurs in order to talk about their projects. So on our website, you can see the previous webinars that have been hosted. Feel free to have a look, and you can also ask us any questions if you want to get in touch with these previous interviewers. Well, previous people who intervened. And now today we are welcoming Professor Brighton Samatanga. He has a background in molecular biophysics and physical chemistry, and he did training with general and fundamental applied interest, especially on genome regulation mechanism and molecular biotechnology. So he holds a degree, a bachelor degree in biochemical engineering, and also a master's degree in biophysics from the Jacob University Bremen in Germany. On top of that, he also has a PhD in physical chemistry from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. So his PhD studies were focused on physical chemistry, as I said, and they were followed by 2 postdocs at the University of Münster and as well at the University of Leipzig in Germany. So he holds several awards, has many peer-reviewed publications, and he's a reviewer for internationally acclaimed peer-reviewed journals, such as Nucleic Acid Research, and he's also a member of various professional organizations, such as the German Biophysical Society. So he has been profiled and interviewed by several reputable international magazines, such as Nature, Germany's leading newspaper, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, South Africa's Times Live, Sunday Times, as well as Zimbabwe's The Herald, and many more. So until recently, he was a professor for physics of biological and soft matter at Leipzig University in Germany, and he is now the founder and CEO, of the Biotech Institute in Zimbabwe. So today in his presentation, he will tell us more about the growth and development of the Biotech Institute, with of course a focus on financing, investment, and telling us how he is trying to achieve self-sustainability both at the firm level and more globally in a national level. So with that said, Professor Samatanga, the floor is yours.
Thank you for such a generous introduction. It is my pleasure to be here. And thank you for welcoming me and giving me the opportunity to present here. So first of all, I'd like to ask whether you can actually see my slide.
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I made my talk, just a bit, I have to remove this guy here. So I titled my talk, Reimagining Entrepreneurship Investment towards Self-Sustainability, because what is really at the core of the institute that I wanted to sort of create was to have a sustainable institution in an African environment. So I'm founder and CEO of the Biotech Institute in Zimbabwe, which we started in 2019. And we actually at a stage whereby we are actually surprised that we have gone so far, considering that 2020 and 2021 has been generally been a COVID pandemic era. So what I have, the Biotech Institute is principally, so what I want to do is basically try to introduce you on what is it that we created, and then just go in and highlight what problems did we face during the process of creating such an organization in Zimbabwe. So the Biotech Institute it's an academic biotech institution that is primarily focused on research and development. And our main focus is really on genomics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence, so that we can use it in our genomics programs, also that we can use artificial intelligence in bioimaging. So for this, I think now we are located in Harare. This is kind of an older picture. I think we have a staff complement of about 9 now. And I think this picture that was taken in nature shows also part of our laboratories that we have currently set up. So the whole idea was to really have, initially was to have an institute that is globally competitive.
Thank you, Sherry.
That is very globally competitive, so that does research that is very much cutting edge and is really leading, I think, research and innovation in the sub-Saharan Africa. What we have is a private institute. Initially, we wanted to actually have this as a non-governmental sort of non-profit organization. But because of the funding models, we tried to get funding from different areas and different places, also crowdfunding. This didn't work out. And then in the end, so it's a private institution, but that we run primarily as a social enterprise. So we make some profits and we reinvest those profits into our research and development programs. So what is the strategy? I think the strategy really, we are located in Zimbabwe. And I think the main idea of the whole strategy is to have a cutting edge and globally competitive research. I think we don't want to do science for Africa. We want to do science for the whole world, of course, with immediate impact in our local African context. There are 4 factors that basically sort of come to my mind, or that I say are benchmark points that I think I want to build this institute going forward based on sort of the pillars. 1, cutting edge instrumentation and methodologies. If a method is too old, takes too long, I think we don't want to be involved in that. We also want to be efficient and effective. So we want sort of the latest technologies that one can access. Modern hands-on research-based education. I think we have had, one of the main sort of difficulties, I think I'll elaborate a little bit more in the next stages, that I faced coming to Zimbabwe is the challenge of competence. I think most people are so educated on theory from public universities, and they have never seen the instrument that they are supposed to work on, or they are not used to the concept and ideas of working on real life problems. So they don't have these problem solving skills. So we want to include this, because for you to be a research institution, you should also have well-educated people. So that's why education is sort of a part and parcel of our whole program. Strategic cooperation. Being in Zimbabwe, I think if you want to be cutting edge, you want to keep contact and keeping exchange notes with other institutions that are at the forefront of research and development programs in different parts of the world, be it Europe, the United States, other African countries, and anyway, I think everybody who's willing and who has something to contribute at the table. I think we also want to open up and be a welcoming institution, which is something that doesn't really happen in many African countries. Having said this, we are research and development. Usually research survives on grants. And during my postdoc years, I've realized this is a very frustrating model of development. You have to wait to get a grant, and then say you have to finish something in 6 months, it takes 2 years and so forth. Or you have to people don't have a long-term prospect about what they want to do. So we also would like to, as far as possible, ingrain an aspect of self-sustainability in our operations, and this mostly by commercializing our research and laboratory services. I think research laboratory services are very much needed in the African context. You can really do a lot. I'll also highlight this, and this can bring in some little bit of cash that you can actually use to finance your research operations. So what are we working on? I think we have Department of Research and Education, and then we have the Department of Technical Services primarily. What are the sort of our main areas? I think not all programs are already advanced. I think we have 1 or 2 programs that are advanced at an advanced research stage, considering that we've only been operational mostly for a year during a COVID-19 era. We want sort of combating disease through genetic engineering. For instance, there's a problem of antimicrobial resistance in Africa, and we would want to use like CRISPR-Cas engineering of bacteriophages to target antimicrobial resistant sort of pathogen bacteria. Then we have a problem that we want to say traditional medicines to patentable drugs. We have a lot of local knowledge that is present in the African context, a lot of plants that we know cure this or this other disease. And we are saying, can we take this knowledge and use it to create drugs that are actually patentable, that you can create a biotech sector. You can also compete and sell these things internationally. Of course, here for other reasons, what we are studying is not one of the sort of most exclusive plants to Zimbabwe. Here we are actually starting a project of medicinal cannabis. I think cannabis has been used in Zimbabwe quite a lot, and we are using our CBD oils, I think, to actually analyze some effects that have been that we want to look at. Enzyme and cell engineering, I think we want to sort of, I think we have an ongoing project where a postdoc is trying to increase the food nutrition for animal feeds, I think using some special enzymes. And also, I think this is, my last point was sort of inspired by COVID. What we saw with COVID is that the countries like Zimbabwe and other African countries did not have the capacity to respond. And we are also trying to talk with the authority where we could actually act as a sort of a disaster response center, whereby in the case of things, epidemics like COVID-19 or so forth, can we really have a super fast response and try to mitigate the extent of damage that will be done by those pathogens. So all this, because you cannot get the staff to do sort of this advanced research without proper educational programs. So we find most of the staff are actually not competent enough. And we are also now sort of in the programs of actually setting up our own university where we only offer master's and PhD programs so that we can train people to be as competent as we want them to be. And also that we can also have a regular supply of staff that really, so that we can have continuity that we need. So these are sort of the programs that we need, and these are complementary to the topics that are listed above that way. Like I said, all this research, we have 1 or 2 projects running on, and all of those are internally funded. And this is where sort of our Department of Technical Services comes in hand, whereby we want to generate funds to pay for our research, so to try to attain that self-sustainability concept. And here we have a fully functional clinical diagnosis laboratory. So we also do COVID-19 PCR testing for travelers, diabetes tests, HIV tests, all this kind of stuff, we can do that. When you run a laboratory in a sort of in Zimbabwe and other African country, one of your biggest challenges is clean water. So you have to go and set up a whole water purification system, and you have to control the water that it has. It doesn't have any weird ions or concentrations of ions. Is it clean enough? Filter it and so forth, because you cannot do advanced research without clean water. So that means you set up a water testing operation, but we need it for our own services, but then we also sort of commercialize it, and we do all sorts of water controls for all other people around the place so that we can get a little bit of money to sustain our operation. Food testing as well. We're in the process of sort of securing a next generation sequencer, and this also will have a lot of next generation sequencing services offered, I think, throughout Zimbabwe. One of the things which also happened, I think, because of COVID, it's also we want to do our own software development. So because of all sort of fake certificates that was happening, I think we had our own software that we captures COVID data and a sort of a COVID app, so that we can also sort of be internationally compliant to just have these QR codes on your cell phone and so forth. And this software we also offer free to other laboratories. So this also comes to that concept that even though we're a private laboratory, we also have that kind of sort of social enterprise concept of operation. Now, I think this comes to what most of you, to the point why most of you are here to hear about entrepreneurship and investment in Africa. And this is not primarily textbook knowledge. I think this is my own sort of tale based on what I have experienced so far. I think I don't want it to sound like the book of doom and gloom. Let me just say within 1 year, we are almost 1 year of operation. We are much more advanced than what I thought I would be. I expected to be at the place I am within a period of 5 years. So we have, even though it's a very difficult task, we have managed to make, I think, significant progress. So I think going through, the first point, of course, is money. If you have $10 million, I think you don't have any problems. You have your own funds for 10 million, you can buy your own building, you can set up the operations that you want, and so forth. So this is for good for people. If you want to borrow from family and friends, that's also great. I'm always very anxious about this point because I think investment in Africa is very risky. I think if you lose that money, to break relations. So it's not sort of my most preferred, unless if it's, I don't know, your wife, your husband, or something like that, then that could be fine. Investors, I think we have talked to investors primarily before I started the Biotech Institute. So I think I'm just going to derive sort of this point from sort of what I have experienced, and maybe this can enlighten one's point here and there. I think there are angel investors, there are pseudo angels, there are devils. You have to look very closely at what is the objective. I think the objective for us was to really have an Afrocentric institution whereby African companies can also have sort of their own concept and drive them forward. And once you have a lot of money also from investors that don't really share your vision or just about money making, I think within a short time, you don't own the company, you don't own the vision, you don't own the mission. So somebody's controlling that. And then more and more, we just have foreign-owned companies that have some sort of understanding of what needs to be done, but do not quite comprehend it anymore, but also might not have the drive that we have, because sometimes I think as a Zimbabwean or as a Nigerian, in a Nigerian context, or you might have more passion to do something that is beyond profit making. So I think investors are all good, but I had a lot of discussions, I think, with investors. They took a long time. Didn't come to anything, because I think it came up to certain points that you can say, okay, this is my sort of red lines and so forth. But I think still investors are important. And we are reaching the next stage where we have promising investors. And I think one has to really consider. We looked for grants from international agencies. Everybody's talking about sustainable development goals, industry, all these kind of programs. Women empowerment programs. I think the Biotech Institute right now is almost, I think, 85% women. But I always feel like none of these agencies want to give money for infrastructure development. They want to give you more money to buy bread, and then you eat it, and then you come tomorrow to ask for more money. No one really wants to give you sort of sustainable development aid, whereby you get money, you create something. If it's women empowerment, I can employ women, a lot of women, or if it's youth empowerment, I can employ the youth, and so forth. So it is that sort of that, even in those kind of contexts, it's limited. That's why I say their understanding of our problem is completely different. Governmental support, I think we have tried this. And of course, my point is whether governmental support is even attainable. I think we were looking for space. I think there are innovation hubs that have been sort of created all over the country. And the whole point for these innovation hubs is to act as incubators where companies could just come in and technology and biotech, and then after a while, they can leave, right? This is how the innovation hubs are supposed to operate. We have a lot of these. I think there are maybe 6 in Zimbabwe. They're pretty empty because they don't have funding for equipment. But we've never been given any space. I think just the whole discussion has been such a nightmare. And you wonder, somebody would rather keep a building empty rather than us coming in. So we have our own building, a rented building, where we have to pay rent and all sorts of stuff. But I would rather, especially, of course, now we are a little bit much better off than we were at the beginning. But in the beginning, it was really hard to pay for rent rather than to buy more reagents, right? We are in a lot of talks, I think, with the National Institute of Health Research, which is located in Harare, where they also had a lot of space. And this thing dragged forever. I think then it needed cabinet approval and so forth. I think just to rent some space in an aspiring company. So it was a difficult, and I think it's like this in most African countries. Maybe the intentions are good, but just dealing with government takes so long and so much patience that in the end you just get frustrated. So we got frustrated, got our own building, renovated it, started our own laboratory, and are well equipped and operational right now. Of course, we are a research institution. We don't get any tax rebates. We don't get any funding. There are some, even some international grants where we can be of service, but being included on this. I think there's also the suspicion of private research institution, and also there is sort of this competition with public universities. So whether government support is attainable, I think this is, I think there are countries, I think where you hear like Botswana and South Africa, I think this is a little bit much better. I don't know how Ghana, Nigeria, and Rwanda might be in this picture. But I'm actually happy that I actually managed without governmental support, because the freedom that I have to do the things I want to do is just amazing. You know, I have my own space, my own way of doing things. I think whenever you get governmental support, you have to sacrifice. Yeah, you don't have as much freedom as you would want. So this is also one thing to consider. So this one I call it local private partnerships. I don't believe that everybody coming from the US or England or wherever should start their own laboratory, right? Then you have the Biotech Institute 1, Biotech Institute 2, 3. It's really hard work. And for me also, I think my most initial concept was actually to say, can I join an existing sort of private laboratory and be a partner in that? Because there is only so much space for private laboratories, I think, in Zimbabwe and so forth. But this didn't turn out so well. There is this idea that concept that also happened that, I wrote a lot of proposals, and this guy who was in charge of these organizations, this is not a name and shame, I think, talk, so we don't need names. And then the guy disappeared. And I think this is one of those sort of, issues that happens, I think, a lot, particularly in Zimbabwe, or you give them to maybe in a government agency, and they don't, instead of them giving the contract to you because you have a proposal to do something, they do it themselves. So for us to have sustainable development, I think private partnerships are very important. We continuously meet these problems, but we cannot have 2,000 people, each of them with their own little laboratory. My vision actually for the Biotech Institute is, I think, going forward more and more, I'll be more like a dean with different research groups, with people having their own funds, research project, managing their own money, and just offering people space to do what they want to do. And I think this is sort of a more sustainable and inclusive way of developing and going forward, because the other person, the next person doesn't have to think about the building, the rent, the laptop, or the computer, because I think we have this now. The printers, the printing paper, electricity, we have this under control. So I think this is also sort of say, okay, now we can reach out and sort of try to expand this concept so that more and more, especially Zimbabweans in the diaspora or other Africans in the diaspora, can be included in sort of development programs back home. So, of course, it's not all doom and gloom. Like I said, I think we have managed to make, I think, very important partnerships. We have the Zimbabwe Industrial Hemp Trust, because we work with medicinal cannabis. I think they're a very big player. We also support a lot of community schools and so forth. We have, and then we have two companies. I think Amplex is a German company, Maestrogen. I think I'll come to them. And then we have also getting access to a supercomputer, the Zimbabwe Center for High Performance Computing. And we are also trying to negotiate a final with University of Zimbabwe, sort of we have some training partnership and so forth. So sustainability. I think whole point is you want to lead a cutting edge institution in an African context. You want it to be sustainable. One of the biggest challenges that I have faced is staffing. The staff that you get are not, one of the things are not competent enough. They have seen they've heard about an autoclave, about a PCR machine and so forth, but they've never seen it. So one of the things you have to train a lot. And then the other challenge that you face is short-term vision. I think people have a lot of problems. They want to pay the hospital bills for their mother today or that tomorrow. They want their school fees tomorrow. So they lack that long-term vision. They want a lot of money now and don't want to have to build up a career or to grow with the company. So this kind of is a big challenge. And one of the problems that I even face is hustling. So you have an employee that basically doing 10 other jobs during work time. So he owns, chicken factory, has a cow farm, has a couple of trucks, and so forth. And now, of course, you cannot prevent that person from trying to sustain his livelihood to a reasonable level. But from the company growth and your vision and perspective, that person does not quite share it or does not really believe in it or so forth. So these are happening. So some skepticism, record keeping. Some people have come from government institutions where record keeping is really slack, and you are trying to promote these ideals and so forth. So I think one of the main things is that's training program for staff and also trying to put them into a long-term vision kind of strategy and a do-it-yourself strategy. I think this is another point. People have been, sort of trained that if you have a problem, you call somebody. Sometimes you can just twist the screw and do it yourself, but they don't trust themselves to put the screw. They have to call somebody. And I'm like, especially instrumentation and all these kind of things, they're important from somewhere. You cannot just keep sending an instrument from here to Roche in Switzerland so that they turn a screw for me. So I think these are sort of things, one of the biggest challenges that we have had that we need to face. And of course, because of some of these problems, some of our employees, I would say not employees, partners, are abroad. So we have a hybrid approach where some of the staff that we have or advisors are actually one of the University of Zurich in Kenya, in Texas, also in the USA. They are really well integrated into our research format because these guys have their own research groups. They are very much advanced. You cannot take that person out of their own context and bring them to Africa and pay them. They're just well beyond our means. So this is, I think, a hybrid approach. Some people will be locally based and some people will be both abroad and back at home. Security challenges. I think one of the things that happened in Zimbabwe when I was setting up the Biotech Institute is like after 5 months of bringing in a lot of equipment and so forth, we got robbed. So we had an armed robbery, 6 armed robbers came. Basically, all the computers were stolen, some equipment was stolen, some very expensive computers were stolen, which run some certain equipment. So of course, we had to upgrade our security, put electric fence, motion sensors, CCTV, and so forth. But because of the expense of security, you have to it invades the privacy of staff or employees because now we have to put CCTV everywhere because we want to catch the next thief by all means. So we have to have a balance so that you don't invade on the privacy of employees. But security is a major issue. There are robberies happening in Zimbabwe all the time, and I think in Africa, other African countries as well. And we have to pay a security company in Zimbabwe well manned with a dog and so forth. It's about $1,000 a month, and that's a lot of money. That's a lot of reagents that one would be buying. Then what I call other certain problems, and I think here the list can go on and on and on. All right. So these are all what I call entrepreneurship and investment key points. I think that one has to really consider. It doesn't matter how smart your idea is, but if your building is not secure, you're bound to crash to the ground. So we had to really reestablish, rebuy the equipment, computers, and so forth because of what had happened to us, right? And an employee was almost traumatized during that situation. Now, but on the other side of the problems, part of it, we have, this is from The Economist, 2007, showing Africa as the dark continent. Electricity is in short supply, really high short supply. And this is even surprising, I think, considering it's just a matter of strategy. I think we have a lot of sun, right? So power supply, solar power should be well included. I think we have had our institute is basically on solar power. So electricity can go off and on, but we keep going. So these are other investment that people have to really consider, I think, beyond what their small or big project is actually about. One thing that I forgot was also about power surges. The power in which comes, it's always too much or too so whatever. You have this high and up. And so we had even one, because I was in Europe for 20 years, came back to Zim, had forgotten a couple of things, bought some computers, plugged them up, they're all bad. So we had to buy new computers, but now with all such protectors. But I think these are sort of a lot of other problems that one has to keep in mind, and it's different for different countries. And I think one has to sort of think about all these, take into account in their investment models that this has to be done. And insurance. So when computers crash on all sorts of things, then you need to put insurance also to get this equipment replaced. We hadn't had insurance there, now we do. And of course, you have to make sure it's the best insurance that actually pays for stuff when they are stolen or when they are damaged. Because there's a lot of, you have to filter through because there's a lot of insurances, but when something happens, they don't actually deliver. So I think it's a really minefield and a lot of factors that we had to take in. I think then we had to do a lot of surveys and so forth. And I think now we have a decent insurance that even covers public liability, our employees, our equipment, our site, because of the robbery, we had not had the insurance then, so we are not covered. But now we are covered, at least that could sort of sustain us a little bit. I think it's insurance is like something that people don't really take seriously in Africa, but I think every entrepreneur and someone with a serious about investment should really consider this. And then you have, I think I'm coming very close to the end of my talk, supply chain problems. You have a Roche machine, you have something from Thermo Fisher or a QIAGEN machine, you want to use a QIAGEN kit. Every time I order that thing, it has to go to some sub-distributor, maybe in Zimbabwe. The distribution is in South Africa. And then they have to order it from Europe. And then it has to come and pass through all these different steps. Everybody adding their own markup. And you'll be hoping that everyone in that whole pipeline handled this reagents properly. Maybe they are cold chain reagents and somebody forget them and so forth. So this is a big challenge. Also doing this kind of business sort of in the biotech sector or laboratory things. And for some of us, we in the end, we have another company in Germany. And some of the things I just buy using my German company and send directly to Zimbabwe, because also after the distribution chain, the prices are so high. And it also one the prices are so high because sometimes the markups in Zimbabwe are like 200%. So you are not sustainable. So it comes back to my sustainability issue. And then the delays. So I'd rather buy it through my European-based company and send it to myself. So this is better. So, and this is the whole process is frustrating. And you wonder why, for instance, for some companies which have an online supply chain, why can't just any country just buy online and just send? So we more and more, so like for Amplex and Maestrogen, these are like big suppliers. Amplex supplies sort of our COVID-19 PCR kits. We use them as end user and we're the distributor. For most companies that we want to rely on the long term, we are an end user and a distributor. Well, that way we can sort of control our pricing, keep it low, and also keep our supply chains intact, because I think there's some randomness sort of in maybe except for South Africa, but for Zimbabwe, Zambia, Namibia, all these kind of things, I think there's a lot of problems in this. And then, of course, if you have partners, creditors, suppliers, so QIAGEN gives you stuff, Thermo Fisher, I don't know, whoever, you have to pay them. So here, Shell is the Reserve Bank Zimbabwe in the left. And we have our own local currency, which is the Zimbabwean dollar. But when you play, you want to pay with the US dollar. But even if you sell your stuff in US dollars, you have to get approval from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe to take money outside the country. So this is a big challenge, right? Because you have partners, you have creditors, you have suppliers, you want to play nice, the money has to flow both ways, and then you have to figure out how to do this. And countries like Zimbabwe have also some sanctions, they cannot buy from some things and so forth. Officially, we are not on sanctions, they're only on certain selected individuals, but few companies understand this. So they just think, oh, Zimbabwe, then they cannot deal with everybody. So it's a challenge. We've managed to solve it. I think some companies have really gone out of their way to sort of have payment facilities that actually we have a smooth process now. Otherwise, it would be a nightmare, the whole process. Then we have dealing with the public sector. I think any investor or whatever has to really think about it. Regulations that keep changing, licensing bodies, you want to get something licensed, it's a long time. was a council permission, tax authorities. I think it's not all insurmountable. I think it's a lot of big challenges, but I think one has to take this into account that I think in the African context, it's still a little bit very, very difficult. The city council is on strike, or somebody got fired, or they're underpaid, so they're not coming to work, or during COVID-19, you have people working from home, but they have no internet. So all these kind of several issues that are challenges that you face in this. But I think not to be sort of pessimistic, I think we're a profitable company right now. We are very much compliant with all the licensing bodies and the regulations. Of course, we wanted, for instance, I think right now to register a university for our programs. And I think since 6 months, we haven't been given a Rechnung, that's German now, an invoice of how much it costs. So they're actually planning maybe to hike the price before giving us the invoice. So these are some of the things sort of frustrated that somebody has to deal with, and so forth and so forth. But of course, there is hope. I think we are in a COVID pandemic, and then slowly we're getting to normal life. Slowly, I think we are catching up with the times. And I think as a wrap up, I'll just like to say, I think for anyone thinking about entrepreneurship and investment in Africa, I wish you all the best of luck. I think there's very high rewards. I think, but the environment is changing. I think there's a lot of goodwill. There's a lot of movement, but we're not there yet. Thank you. So I'll pass it on back to you, Arabelle.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your intervention. It was quite informative. I've seen that there were a few questions that came up. Yes, there is a recording that is being made, and it will be available starting next week on the webinar. On our webpage. So the link to our webpage is in the chat above. So it's africanp4p.org, and the webinar will be available there. So now we have a question from Elsie, who said, how long did it take to raise the funds in general? I mean, I know it's still an ongoing process, but let's say for the initial, when you first started, how long did it take to get something that allowed you to?
So I think I wasted time talking to some big investors or companies who wanted to invest in my company. They wanted to expand into Africa and do something in Africa. And we had a lot of discussions, but it was such a big company with so many different levels of operation that the discussion kept going on. And then they canceled their annual meeting and they had to go on. So that wasted about, I think, so that about 2019 until, November, from October 2019 around maybe until March 2020. And then after that, I was like, okay, fine, this is my thing. I then put my own personal resources. So I was like, okay, this is our little money. Where do we start? And then we started putting our money and so forth and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then in the end, what was the best part was, I'm not working from a diagnostics field. Mm-hmm. But when I thought about diagnostics as part of my discussions, I was like, okay, diagnostics can actually have a way of making money. Because that's when we started also, because one of the things that I wanted to do, one of the main extra was to have COVID PCR, because I think everybody's closed their borders and Zimbabwe had, you wanted to help out. So then we had one German company, which is Amplex. They gave me almost a very reduced PCR machine and even very favorable payment terms, all right? Okay. So I even got the PCR machine and then paid, I think, everything later. And then that started also moving the field. Okay. So then we could generate some incomes. But before that, I had to pay even employees for about 3-4 months from my own pocket, because you still need employees to set things on the ground to get for the diagnosis. Somebody has to be registered and somebody has to be doing this. So it was to sacrifice personal funds. I think this is, I don't know, looking back to do this in the time of COVID, where job security is it's not the smartest idea, but it worked out fine for me.
Congrats again on that.
Yeah.
So, sorry, before I go to the next question that one of the participants asked, I wanted to know, would you then say that the financing aspect of the Institute is your biggest challenge, or if not, what would that be?
Okay, financing of the institute was the biggest challenge because I think the whole institute was based on a genomics platform, whereby we will actually be offering next generation sequencing services. But if you look at the next generation sequences that we want, cost about $530,000 US, right? So we are now, you cannot afford it.
Yeah.
Because before you even go to the sequencer, you want whatever a PCR instrument, you want someone to have maybe a bioanalyzer to look at the different fragments that you get.
You want to
something
quantify the DNA, your libraries.
Exactly. You want all that whole thing. You still need the autoclaves to make sure all your stuff is clean and sterile, because you whatever. So financially, it was really difficult. And we're actually now in the process of actually getting that sequence. I think a smaller sequencer we could afford, or nanopore, whatever, but that's too small for what we're trying to do, because we want to sequence like different plants. We have plant breeding programs. We want to sequence humans because we've been asked by certain departments to do forensics for them. So now, even though there was like zero governmental support, now because we have sort of crossed a certain critical threshold, some people are coming in with requests to do things that certain partners of theirs have previously failed. So I think financing is the biggest challenge, and staff. I think staffing is really, because you can buy a nice sequencer, but if you don't have a capable person to run it, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, not just run it, but also, well, don't break it, I guess.
Yes, exactly. But they can also get not so much out of it. You understand? Because you want people to get as much out of it as possible. I think most African governments have equipment that are sitting, that have been donated by some international partners or donors, just because the guy who was trained to run that instrument left. So you don't want to run in that problem. You get a huge instrument and then it's sitting there. So this is, I think, and the second from financing, I think it's staffing. I think staff is not at the level that I want.
Okay. But hopefully, you will get there. And as the institute grows and you get the ball rolling and,
So we have managed to have some programs right now where we can actually have some companies or some partners coming in where say they would take, I think I found much such good stuff, but it was a huge search. Right, but it was a huge search, and now we also have partners whereby they would take our staff and they would train them in Germany. So okay. They will go and spend 6 months or 3 months there. So these are some of the sort of strategic cooperation that we are having. That these guys, and also that international exposure, because I want to change the type of thinking that you have from just being locally in some local little hole, but thinking more in a more global context. And just getting, doesn't matter where you go, India, Europe, Canada, whatever, but that exposure, it just freshens you up. And I think it's necessary.
Yeah, that's a very good approach. I've seen that we have 2 people that have raised their hands. I will get to you. I'm just gonna ask the last question that we had from Mr. Ngatse. Food testing, what exactly will you be testing? Do you plan on doing chemical residues test?
So we are, I think food testing came up more and more as this was not even, part of my sort of business plan. When you start, you have some plan. And then, of course, I was in Europe, right? And then I go to the ground and then a lot of things pop up like, okay, that needs to be done. That needs to be done. Food testing is more like sort of microbial contamination. Do we have that? Do we even have some different contamination with different, what is it called, chemicals? Yeah, chemical testing. This is needed. And this even goes, because microbial will be our most immediate, because we have a microbiology lab and we're doing this for water testing and so forth. But we're just expanding because there's a need. Now it's just more like we're a laboratory, we're just adjusting our equipment to meet the need that is available as sort of our technical services or extension services, because it's just a couple of instruments. And this is where you would even put things like soil testing, because it's an agroeconomy, right? And at some point, people just want to know how many nitrogen, phosphorus, and whatever they have in the soil. This is a very basic sort of analysis from my point of view as a physical chemist. It's just an instrument that does it. No one wants to do it manually. You could do it manually. Yes. It's just a simple chemistry reaction. But so we are just, so for us, the whole range of tests, we want to develop them as they are requested by either food companies, hygiene companies, And here we are also trying to use, I think for microbial contamination, we are using luminescence. We don't want to do cultures so much. They take a long time. We don't want anything that takes forever. I did an experiment, I think before I set up my water department, I went to the reference laboratory for water testing in Zimbabwe, and I gave them a big bottle of water. And then I told them, and I asked them, can I drink this water? And it took 7 days for me to tell me, yes, I could drink the water. Okay, I'd been drinking it, so I knew already. And then the other meta-analysis that never came back, and I think it's about 6 months now. Right. Okay. And then that's when we say, okay, let's get our equipment in, because I think whoever's supposed to do it is not doing it at all. So this is, but we want to expand into all possible regions.
Okay. So Emmanuel, I will let you ask your question.
Emmanuel is muted.
Yeah, I asked him to unmute, but maybe he's no.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Brighton, for this impressive journey, which needs actually a lot of courage to take. So I was impressed about your journey in this biotech.
Yes.
I have some few questions. So the first question is, actually, I see you are doing really a lot of things, and I can say maybe it is even too ambitious, because if I see what you want to do, really, it is something huge. Maybe
yes.
it will take, as you say, to take maybe 20 years. I don't know.
Yes.
Because one of the things like this, from traditional medicine to patentable drugs. So to what I saw on the program that we have, you don't have like any medical, okay, you have it, but I think maybe you need more than medical, how do you call it? I say biomedical science and technology, but this one, I think maybe it is different from like testing, doing these trials, like drug, when you are doing these drug trials. So actually, how do you want to do this? Do you want to collaborate with some biomedical research institute?
Yeah, thanks for your question. I think it's quite well observed. But I think one of the things that you may have missed actually during my talk, maybe I didn't quite emphasize this. I see my role, and we just said in my institute, that's why I call it an institute, more as a dean with different research groups dealing with different research areas, right? What we've doing so far, and I think what I want is to hire the right people to do the job. You're more like, that's why it's called an institute. I need more researchers to work on this. And with the amount of sort of administration and partnership management and procurement that I have, it's very difficult. It's almost impossible that I will be on the bench doing stuff. I think even in Europe, when you get a professor, you hardly see them on the bench. So it's hiring the right people with the right set of qualifications to do the right job. And here, what we have done, there is also this sort of African Academy of Science program that was offering some little bit of money. We have had different postdocs, I think one even in some different Cape Town in South Africa, and another locally. They have applied with us as host institution. They have other postdocs and other researchers that have applied with us as host institution. So we welcome all these people who want to get their funding and fit into these programs to come to us as host institution. And then they can work on these kind of topics. We have internally some funds to pay for maybe a couple of postdocs, 1 or 2, 3 postdocs that can actually do the preliminary work up to a certain level. But we are also engaging, I think government has funds to do this. You understand, for medicinal cannabis, it's like part of the money paid by farmers, like those 50,000 for licensing fees. Part of that money is actually supposed to be for research. So we are actually trying to engage sort of those partners to actually say, can we access some of that money? And if we manage to do so, then we will actually find the right people that have the right experience to actually work on this. I think we have them already. Some of them I have them already, 1, 2, 3. They're in a consultancy level, but I cannot pay them to be on the bench level. So this is the transition. But one of the main things that we're doing sort of in the cannabis sector is also we have some people coming in to help with this sort of conversion of plant leaves into oils. That's not the research, but just the chemistry conversion. Because right now, Zimbabwe cannot export the cannabis leaves because they're just too bulky, and no one has been doing this. And this is also our license that we applied for is actually part of this. And we'll be doing this, and hopefully, like my technical service part, we make some cash. And then from that money that we do for a service for the farmers, we pay the people that do the research. So that is the model. I don't think I'll be on the bench. For the things in my areas, I'll do maybe 1 3-day trainings and oversight and so forth, but I would not be doing any work on the bench. Mostly
Thank you so much. Actually, that is really great that you already have some people, postdocs, who are applying to carry their research there. So the other question is about this sustainability. So
Yes.
as you said, sometimes in Africa, most of people, they want to invest, but the problem is to think, is it really sustainable? Do we have the right people, or do we have the market? So now for your product, you say that so the market is Africa, but also the other problem is that you have competitors, and you didn't talk about competitors because, as you said, some of the products you will be putting on the market or the services, other companies also, maybe they're thinking about also doing the same. I know some of there is one company in South Africa, they're doing almost the same, like sequencing, also selling reagents, and also I think they are also working on peptides, and also they're doing these protein-protein interactions. But I think they don't work on natural products. So how do you plan to face all this competition?
No, I think competition is good. I think I welcome competition. That's what keeps the world exciting. I think in Zimbabwe, for instance, there is very little appetite to import stuff. If you really even hear from the government right now or from different players, manufacturing is key. Even if you read the National Development Strategy document right now, if I can do it, they would be less likely to import from South Africa. And South Africans mostly are not doing it from South African companies. They are usually distributors for European or American companies. That's why it takes forever to get stuff from them. But I think we are not working on the same, look at right now, COVID, malaria, tuberculosis. You know, I've been in a different field for a very long time, and I'm just coming into this sort of diagnostics field. Which kids or a diagnostic assay or kits Africans are being used right now? It's only last year that Cape Bio, this year, like months, Cape Bio in South Africa said, okay, they now have an RT-PCR kit. But no one is using an African kit, and these companies have been long in the business, right? Yes. Which drug, how many are really patentable drugs? That is, for me, I'm located in Africa, but for me, Africa is just a launchpad. I think we should be competitive now, like what the Chinese did, that we also sell our stuff in Europe, because you might have a price match. I think it's just limited sort of thinking or a scope. I don't think why we have to localize ourselves in a global environment. So I think part of it, of course, in the end, you are as a business. So far, I think the competition is very low. There are very little diagnostics kits here. The antimicrobial resistance problem has been there forever. People are just doing surveillance. They are not doing drug discovery. I haven't seen a drug discovered by Congo, by Botswana, by whatever, that is being used to treat a certain antibiotic resistance pathogen. So it's there, but it's sort of some of this done mostly by public institutions, and the efficiency of operation is a little bit different. But at the end of the day, it's not you win some, you lose some. The fair game, otherwise everybody would stop. How many universities do we have researching on TB or cancer right now? But you still need to do it for human development. And over like the last 50 years, no one has anything. Of course, you have to take it into account from a business point of view. But research is research. Some part we do it just because the world requires it. Whether you win in the end or you don't win, but at the end of the day, society wins.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, I think I can maybe end up here. But what you said about doing even things locally as Chinese are doing, just we can also, I think, as I said, in Africa, we can also have our own things like have these biotechnological tools that are made in Africa, patented in Africa. We don't need maybe to think about Europe or to think about China or the USA. We can also think about Africa and sell our products made from Africa in Africa. Thank you so much, Brighton. So exciting.
Cheers. You're on mute, Annabelle.
Sorry. Thank you, Emmanuel. And now we will move over to Anisu. Can you hear us, Anisu? Okay. It seems that he is having microphone issues. We cannot hear you. If you don't mind, Anisu, you can chat type the question in the chat box. And in the meantime, I'm gonna let Elsie talk since she also had a question.
Hi, Brighton. Great job.
Thanks.
I see you again. So there are a lot of interesting things you're doing, and I'm actually happy that you've gotten there. And for me, it's very timely. So it's not more like a question. It's like I'm applying for a grant. Harvard has, they have research on medical cannabis. And I'm looking from, and we have several grants that are probably going to be awarded for that. And part of it is I'm writing a grant because I want to do like an analysis of cannabis in Africa. And so you are very timely because I was only thinking of the West Africa because I know researchers who might work there. And since your company is providing such facilities, I think I might have to have a discussion with you after this as a partner on that grant. If you already have like a pipeline into such analysis. So the first question is, are you actually doing that now? If you are not doing it, when do you intend to start doing it? My grant is due in January. Is that something you would consider? Because I'm moving into more global health and phytomedicine. And we have 2 plants from Africa that we are analyzing. We've managed to get the license to import one of the plants here and grow it here. But as an African, I don't want the things to be imported here and done here. I want it to be done on the continent and be there. One is it's a medicine that is used in Cameroon for anemia. And more, we have a lot of funds that are for medical cannabis, so including that. So is that something you would do? Number one, do you have a researcher there who would do that? Like if it's part of a grant, it has to be that you're either, well, let me put it this way. Let's discuss after this and see what you have in your pipeline for such analysis.
There are 2 things. We have some preliminary work done on cannabis or some stuff done, but I can't say what, especially on this platform, definitely not. And we have some other equipment. So there's some basic stuff you can even do with what equipment that we have. Then we also have a flow cytometer that we also bought because we also want to see the effect on cells. One of the projects we are doing is actually the effect of cannabis on COVID-19 that I can talk about. So that we even have a flow cytometer that we just purchased and is arriving. And then we have a person who already a postdoc with flow cytometer and all this kind of stuff who's going to work on that. But we have other stuff going on, but I just can't say it on a recorded Zoom. You have to ask me in person. Then let's have a chat on this afterwards. We have some sequencing related things going on and so forth. So I'll let you know.
Good. I'm happy that you have that in the pipeline. Let's talk about it. Fix some meeting and do that. Thanks for your talk. And it's great what you're doing. And more people have to do that. And I do agree that partnership is the best way to go about it.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the support.
Okay, so Anisu was able to type up his question, and he says, firstly, thank you for this presentation. My question is about how the Institute deals with waste disposal. And as a follow-up, are you in the long run considering seeing up a biotechnology cluster for Africa? Because one of the things missing in the African research field is this ecosystem model to get funding and also collaborate.
So yes, so for waste disposal, we already have some waste disposal companies. I think part of it, what we do is, of course, if we have some waste, you disinfect it, right? Either you are using some hypochlorite or you're autoclaving and so forth. And then you pass it on to some waste disposal companies. So we don't throw away our waste on the street. So there are some regulated waste disposal companies that do this. How well they do this, I still don't know yet, but you need to be registered by one of these companies to even get a license to operate. So this is how far we are going with waste disposal. But more and more, I think we might even have to consider getting sort of the environmental management energy license for ourselves if we're creating a lot of waste and we're not sure that these companies are competent enough to actually deal with this waste. So some of the things we are doing have not been done in Zim. And it's a question that we actually have to take seriously, that we have to maybe invest a little bit more into that. What we have as part of sort of the creating an ecosystem in the African context, I think this is my wish. I think everybody, I think Elsie just reached out. We are welcome, to be part of whatever project she's doing, as far if we can have something meaningful to contribute to a project. We also have one of our advisors. I think it's called Kichau Tichedre. He's from Benin. He's a professor for biomedical technology in the US. He's also involved and is one of the clinical studies, one of our contact points. And he would actually want us to do something. He's going to want to assist us, and then later he wants us to assist him in starting something in Benin. So we have sort of these collaborations that we are doing. Right now, of course, it would be nice to start something in Ghana, in Benin, in Togo, but the funding issue, right? You want to start something somewhere and do it well, and then replicate it somewhere else and do it well. But sometimes you don't want to start the same thing. I think we might have a different focus in Zimbabwe and then have a different focus in Zambia, for instance. And then you have this close collaboration that we know, okay, something like this, Zimbabwe specialized in this, Zambia is specialized in this. Because I think from one of sort of my personal feelings is we are not going to go anywhere as a continent if we all want to do everything. I think we have very limited funds. So Benin cannot do vaccinology, biomedical technology, whatever. They might say, okay, we do this and then we leave this to Rwanda, or we leave this. So that kind of partnership and synergies that countries have maybe focus and so forth, or universities have to focus. I think one of the failures for University of Zimbabwe is too big. They have like, I don't know, 1 million programs and they have $20 to fund them. So if they did one thing, they might be very good in it, get a nice profile and very good, meaningful results out of it, but they want to do everything. And in that case, you don't reach anywhere. For us at the beginning, we have sort of a broad profile, but what our priorities will only shift according to which funding we get first. Because if you get a large funding in a certain area, that maybe might take over the priority because now you're committed to this. But once we get people that are there to take up a certain area, or we don't have funding for each of the other area, then they all remain sort of on our program.
Okay. So these are the two last things. Anisu says that you should please reach out to him, and he's written his email address in the group chat. so that you guys can continue an offline chat about the biotech ecosystem. And as a good follow-up to this, your intervention in the question that he asked, we now have Faith, who says, thank you very much for this very encouraging and challenging move, Brighton. I wanted to get from you when this journey on entrepreneurship was born. I've had this and me here in Kenya, and how to commercialize the biotech service for economic development.
So actually, if I'd be very frank, there's some things I'm trying to avoid not to talk about. I started in 2013. I wanted to join somebody else's sort of platform. Somebody had started something in Zimbabwe, and I was going to get some proposals to come in as sort of as one of the researchers under his flag. And the guy just ran away with my proposals. So this is like, and then later, 2018, I just focused on my postdocs and whatever I was doing in Europe. And then 2019, that's when I really said, okay, if I've got to do this, I've got to do it myself, my own way, because then I can sort of also maybe partner on my own terms, because I think there's a lot of trust lost, considering how much sort of investment I had done. No, I believe strongly that you can commercialize a lot of things. Water testing, water needs to be tested, food testing, soil testing, if it's in this sector. Now, we enzyme engineering, we have a postdoc, I think we took a Zimbabwean also from Japan. She did a PhD in Japan, postdoc 3 years, Japan, Romania. She's back now at the Biotech Institute. She's leading a project whereby she's trying to unlock phosphates that animals cannot digest or access. They're locked in some chemical forms, and she's engineering enzymes to do that. All right, and this is sort of really what is important, I think project for those of sort of biotechnology, so that you don't mine phosphates, so you don't have to mine going down, because they have a lot of environmental degradation, and you miss that. But there's a lot of things. You can have plastic problem. There are enzymes that can digest plastic. There are bacteria that can digest plastic. Waste disposal, waste management. You can have enzymes. You can have biogas production. I think a lot of problems can be turned into sort of a biological problem. It's a bioeconomy. I think right now in Switzerland, the whole university has some bioeconomy department, whereby they can say, how can you create an economy out of biology? I think you can commercialize a lot of things, chemical industries, synthesis, and whatever. And one thing we are doing also differently, polymerases, whatever the different enzymes that we use normally in the laboratory, we just buy from somewhere, but they just went somewhere in the yard and just make a little hole and pick them up out of some spring. So we are isolating, we are now also in the process of isolating what our local enzymes, local CRISPR-Cas enzymes, bacteria, and what can they do for us. So you just need to look and then see what are those bacteria doing, what might be important for you. And then this is sort of bioprospecting is some part that people can actually take also very seriously. So I think that you can do a lot of things. Of course, it needs a lot of investment. If it's research, it needs a bit of research, because otherwise you have an inadequate product with the market.
Okay, perfect. And now that's the last comment. It's from Joanina. She says, Dr. Samatanga, thank you for sharing your journey with us. I am final year immunology PhD student at the Mayo Clinic from Kenya, and I am glad that you have taken this step in starting the Institute in Zimbabwe. I do hope that we will cross our path in the future and work together to better research drug development and testing in the continent. And then she gives out her email. So with that,
Wonderful.
That's the last comment that we will take. Thank you again so much for your delightful talk. It was really interesting to find out all the different hurdles and steps that you had to take and that you're still taking in order to make the Institute a viable biotech institution within the continent itself, and then of course in a bigger global context. So I can only wish you all the best, many more success, and I do hope to keep on hearing from you and all the great work that you're doing.
No, thanks a lot for having me. I think, and thanks for everybody who came. I think it was a pleasure being here, and it's always a pleasure to exchange notes. I think even after this, if you have an idea or potential, I'm always welcoming. You know, no idea is useless. I think we need this kind of discussion, and I think we need more synergy and cooperation among Africans. It's what's going to drive us, because it's what's going to drive us forward, because we all have this passion, this energy, and so forth, and we have to sort of somehow be able to share our tiny little resources so that we make the extra step that is required.
Yeah. So thank you so again. To everybody else, I wish you a wonderful day or afternoon, depending on where you are in the continent, and then we look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks a lot. Have a nice day to everybody.
You too. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.